Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next edition of AmiSights. I'm Ami Kassar, your host, along with my special co-host today, Fran Miller. So thank you for here, and happy to have David Brunick with us. He's a fascinating entrepreneur, and he is the founder and CEO of Ellie Mental Health. And David, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't we start by just telling us a little bit about your story?
Well, in college early on in the 1980s decided I wanted to be a therapist. And my dad didn't give advice very often, but he said, why don't you make some money first? And then after you've done that, then you can think about being a therapist. So I did that, worked in corporate America at the C-level in large corporations like AT&T and other places until my mid-20s, after being through 20 different mergers and acquisitions and 80-hour weeks and all of that good stuff, and said, okay, it's time to be a therapist. I went back to school, became a therapist, and then got a doctorate of behavioral health. And I wanted to understand how nonprofits worked, so I was CEO of Goodwill Colorado for a period of time, learning about social services. Then I became CEO of a mental health agency that was a safety net. Purpose of that was to make sure anybody could get care that wanted it. And I found that I connected with my passion there. And I have been the beneficiary, and my family's been the beneficiary of working with many wonderful therapists who have changed the course of our lives. I really had a passion for and a need, actually a drive, to make sure anybody could have that experience of healing and growth, improving our functionality on this planet. And so that's my story.
Did all those years in corporate America send you to therapy?
Occasionally,
Yeah.
but also in retrospect, I can look back now and diagnose some of the CEOs I supported.
What was that like, sort of giving up that stable corporate? I mean, some people would argue that corporate work isn't all that stable. That's sort of a bad myth about it. But giving up all that corporate, quote unquote, stability to go back to school, how did you feel about that? And how did your family feel about that?
I didn't have any real hesitation in doing it. It's something from the very beginning I wanted to do. And while I love a lot about corporate America, and especially large corporations, like plenty of resources and the ability to have large teams and have at your disposal the things you want and need to accomplish your work. And I knew that I was going from being well paid to probably poverty in making this move. I actually don't feel like I had a choice. I have a family that has learned to just roll with whatever it is I do and support me. I don't even give that a second thought. Of course, I talked to them about it, but they were like, "Yeah, makes sense. Go for it."
So it's interesting. You made that choice sort of voluntarily. Well, I mean, I guess I made it voluntary, but when I lost my big fat corporate job, I just said, I'm done. I'm jumping right into something else.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so
yeah.
they,
You can definitely burn out in the corporate world, and there was some of that. So it makes it easier to make the change.
sure. So you went through all that and you went through school and you went into your sort of nonprofit work. But then you, as I understand it, made a transition into entrepreneurship. Can you talk a little bit about that and when and how that all started and the stages for that?
Well, I was 62 when I decided to do this. I'm 64 now. My mom, in her typical style, said, uh, "Why at 62 do you want to be an entrepreneur?" And I said, "It's not so much I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to approach mental health my way. I don't want to report to a board of directors. I don't want to be limited by other people who influence how it gets done. I wanted to do it in the way that I had learned and believed could be successful in providing wide access. And I looked at a lot of different things. I got invited to take a fairly large role reporting to the governor and in mental health, and it was very administrative. It wasn't to me the way that I could get to really deliver care. And I also came to a point where I felt the last major barrier to care was for really the average working person who has insurance generally, either through their employer or through the state exchange. People who are also working, sometimes referred to as the working poor, have Medicaid, Medicare, TRICARE if they're with the military. So 90% of all Americans have some way to use their insurance to get care, which is really fairly new over the last decade or so for most people. Parity acts and other things have really forced insurance to now think about mental health the way they've thought about medical health for a long time. And I felt like the last barrier was helping people to use their insurance to get care. And I know people have been doing it for, decades with their doctors. They think nothing of it. A lot of people don't know that they can get great care through their insurance. And I considered a few different models, but Ellie Mental Health is something that started about 4 years ago, and they wanted to do exactly what it is that I had hoped to do, but they had set up good infrastructure with common electronic health records and back office support, as well as relationships with insurance payers. So it felt like uh, a good way to become an entrepreneur late in my life with a little bit of support, like Ellie Mental Health. And so I joined on and agreed to open 8 clinics, 7 in Colorado and 1 in Wyoming.
How's it going?
It's going well. All of them are open. Most of them are fully staffed, where revenue growth is substantial month over month. I did all of this in 18 months' time. So I opened 8 clinics in 18 months, and the demand is so high in the areas where I opened that the clients are coming. I've taken great care, and this may be my greatest accomplishment or source of pride in that I've taken time with my leadership team to hire, I think, some of the best therapists anywhere. And I think when you have great therapists and they start to work in their communities, the clients come. Now the revenue has to catch up with the expense. That's what's going to happen over the next year. That's always a challenge. Going from the corporate world to where I was spending shareholder money, and there was a lot of it, to spending my own money was a huge shift. And you think about money differently, and the challenge of money to make your dream happen.
So what did you do? Did you buy this business? Did you take over this business? Did you fund this business? What happened?
So with this model, you open all of your own clinics. You go, you find space, generally in medical or business parks. Um, the key is, along with the LA model, is that the carpeting and the wall color and the furniture all has to look the same. So you create a brand image that wherever you are, LA clinics across the country, you walk in and it looks the same. And the systems and the processes and the patient portals all look the same. And so the work of actually propping up a clinic, negotiating a lease, handling the tenant improvements is fairly easy because it's prescriptive. And I didn't have to go think about how do I want it to look. Ellie had done that work. They have created a model where we have really beautiful offices that are welcoming, non-sterile, comfortable places where they can do their healing work. So the standing up of the physical facility is pretty easy. The quality that you offer really is in the therapist. And that's the work. Building a culture that is therapist first allows us to put clients first.
Got it.
So I wanted to build a culture where therapists could thrive and feel very supported and hire therapists that want to be in community with other therapists and have that kind of support and safety net behind them as they practice, because therapy can be a fairly lonely career, especially if you're in private practice. You're seeing client after client and have very little support in that. With my clinics, we do extensive training, clinical supervision, case conferences. If a clinician has a especially difficult session, which is hard on therapists, they can walk out the door and talk to another therapist about that and process that themselves. That's important to me. That's the work. That's the work that it has been, is that part. Um, they are the secret sauce to the success.
So, David, Ellie Mental Health is a franchise. Is that correct?
It is.
And how did you pick it?
Well, there were only two doing franchise models, and I spoke with both. I went to Minnesota where they're headquartered and met the CEO and the corporate team there. I did quite a bit of due diligence to understand who the people were first and what their true mission and driving force was, to make sure it was truly in alignment. And then I did the financial work of, you know, after I pay royalties and the cost of running clinics and make payroll, is there at some point anything left for me? And I was convinced that both things were true, that I was joining a culture that aligned and that money could be made.
And if I recall, David, you actually, as part of your initial 8 store package or 8 location package, there was 2 or maybe 3 already operating locations that you took over. And talk to us a little bit about sort of the transition of that. I mean, it was a called an acquisition plus sort of the intention of moving into the additional locations and scaling quickly.
Yeah, you're right. You have a good memory, Fran. I got the franchise licenses for the clinics I was going to open first. And then there were two owners in Colorado who had opened clinics, had operated them for a year. Neither of them were therapists. And I think felt in over their head. Managing therapists is a very different world. And knowing the insurance world and figuring out how to make all of that work is way more than a lot of people, I think, realized. Both had done a pretty good job of getting them launched, and one clinic was in better shape than the other. I would say I was able to really kind of turnkey one of them. And the nice thing about that, before opening my first clinic, so I was able to take some of the learnings from that and get up the learning curve quicker on those new clinics as a result. So it was very helpful.
Awesome. And when did you jump in and decided you wanted some funding?
I was realizing as I was opening the clinics that the biggest expense really is the therapist and compensation for the therapist. It's an interesting thing that I've learned, that you can't open with one therapist and say we're a clinic. People go into the website, they see one choice, and it's not enough. I think the tipping point is 6 therapists. You want to get to 12 to 16 for economic reasons. And what we found, or I found, was hitting kind of 6 or 7 is when consumers view you as having enough alternatives and enough choices, enough approaches, enough kinds of styles in therapists that they see somebody who's going to resonate with them on the webpage. And that means that you're paying therapists to be idle for a while that builds. And so the operating cost really is that sort of buying inventory, so to speak, that sits for a bit.
David, just, if you recall, how'd you end up connecting with us? Kind of what made you feel confident about the process in general? Talk to you a little bit about the introduction to multi-funding and how kind of things took off from there.
Well, I started to explore funding, something I'd never done before. Had been involved with the process of getting funding in corporations, which is very different, but not on a personal level. I contacted the financial institutions that I had worked with kind of on a personal level. They all loved the story and said, come see us when you're profitable, which is always the conundrum, right? If I was profitable, I wouldn't need the money. And so um, after attempting to apply for an SBA loan at a couple places, traditional banks, and was told no, I talked to my financial advisor, somebody I worked with for a very long time in New York, and he recommended reaching out to Lynn. He said, if anybody can get you an SBA loan, it will be Lynn, and gave me the contact, made an introduction, told Lynn this story, and she said, I think we can get you funding. Let's give it a try. And she, I felt anyway, really connected with the story, what I wanted to do, why I wanted to do it. She felt, I think, personally connected to how important mental health is, the crisis we have in the country right now, and the need to provide access to care. And then I think I started to work with you, Fran, and we got to work putting some financials together, and you presented it to a few organizations and found one who was willing to provide basic funding to open the last 4 clinics. And from there, I was able to actually accelerate opening the clinics faster than I expected, which was challenging, but we got it done.
Awesome. And how's it going now? How's the funding impacted your business? Where are you at in your journey?
Yeah, I would say that the funding got the physical structures open and paid for some of the operating expense that goes along with it. And I think you get to profitability generally slower than you expect, not quite there. We are spending less and less of my own personal funds now each month. As we get to profitability, I expect we'll be profitable at the end of the year. Much I would guess anyway. Most entrepreneurs or businesses, lending doesn't do everything. Grit, hard work, leaning in, paying very close attention to expense, timing of bringing therapists on at the same time that clients are coming on is key. And so it's made it possible, but you have to have some of your own resources to keep it going anyway in this particular scenario. And it's I'm in talking to other entrepreneurs that have been doing this longer. I guess it's not unusual, but I sure wish it would happen faster.
So how do you feel now about your life and what you're doing? How's your happiness quotient compared to 10 years ago?
Oh, this is the most exhilarating thing I've ever done. And it's also the scariest thing I've ever done. I've never had to think about things like, mortgaging my home or, not getting a new lifestyle changes. but they're worth it because I walk into my clinics. I see a waiting room full of people honoring us with allowing us to join in their life journey, do their healing work. And I know that their lives will be changed. And so it's worth the risk. That's the exhilaration. That's the energy I get. I spend a lot of time in the clinics, maybe more than the clinic itself when things are hard. That this is what I'm doing this for.
Love it. What's the future hold, David, for you? Is it just, keeping moving in the right direction here the next 12, 18 months, or how do you see this in 3 to 5 years potentially?
Yeah, it's a great question. One thing that I learned from a friend was, always start this kind of thing with your exit plan first. What is your exit plan? And at some point I would like to be more retired. I don't see myself being fully retired ever, but I have 3 adult children, and one of them is a finance director in the health industry, who has some interest in running this someday and is fully capable. So that's one route. The other is, after we reach profitability, to consider selling it to somebody who wants to add this to their portfolio and exit that way. I don't know which route I'll go, and I suppose the third route is, and not inconceivable, is that I just keep running them because I like it. I like the work, and I like developing new therapists. I like developing leaders. I've got a great team, and after 40 years or so, I hope I have a little bit of wisdom, and watching them grow and achieve is also rewarding. And at some point, they'll be running it on their own. So they're not going to need my help as much. And I recognize that there's a point at which you kind of have to learn to step back and let people fly. So there's a few different ways I could do that, but the next 3 years really are getting it to profitability and sustainability, which will happen, and then letting others take it to the next level.
David, I got one very serious question for you. Ready?
I'm ready.
I'm married to a therapist. How do I survive?
I don't know. She may want to get with my wife, who
I might want to get with your wife, or she might want to get with your wife.
yeah, one or the other. It's I think it's a blessing for my wife at times, and definitely she's kind of learned to ask when we're having a conversation. She'll say, "I just need my husband, no therapy." Or sometimes she'll say, "How would you think about this as a therapist?" If she's curious about my clinical opinion on things, or just wants a pal to hang out with and talk about anything but work, or how people think or feel or anything else, just let's go see a movie and shut that other part off.
So I joke about it, but I'll just tell my wife, don't effing therapize me.
Yeah, I've been told that.
David, where are your clinics located? I'm sorry.
So if you know Colorado, right down the middle of it is I-25, and all my clinics sit just off of I-25, starting from the city of Denver in a very urban neighborhood up to Broomfield, Loveland, Longmont. We've got Greeley, Fort Collins, and Louisville. I forgot about them. They're just kind of a suburb of Boulder, all the way up to Cheyenne, Wyoming. And I can get from the Denver clinic for the furthest south to the Cheyenne clinic in about a 2-hour drive. I
Awesome.
think it's supposed to take 2.5 hours, but I get there quicker.
So I'm not sure if any of our listeners are in your area looking for a therapy place, but if you are in this area and you're looking for a therapist, check out Ellie Mental Health. Awesome.
Thank you. You should. It's a great place to do healing work.
appreciate you. And Fran, thank you for joining us. And thank you for being on the show, David.
Thank you, and thanks for having me on, and thanks for the support of your organization and the work you did for me, Fran.
You got it. It was a pleasure.